Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer. Welcome back to F1 Manager. It's episode 91. Okay, so let's start with this. It's been a little while, so let's recap. First off, I went on vacation. That's the reason for it. It's been a while. Also, we picked up a decent transition period because we reached the end of the season, and that is ultimately what led to the break. And the production time for an episode of this series is quite a bit longer than most of the other series that I have on the channel. So hopefully you're back, you're here with me, and we are ready to continue on with the Jersey journey. Now, as for development cycle, I'm guessing we have time for about one more season before we head into the F1 Manager 2023, which still has not been officially announced. We have no idea what features may be coming with that one. But we've got, I think, about 3.5 months, 3 months or so until we reach the time when this version, F1 Manager 22, came out a year ago. So you would think that it would be in that same development window, but might not necessarily be. That was awfully late in the F1 season for the game to come out. Usually a title that has a yearly release, such as this one, that is tied to some sort of real life sporting event, usually comes out much closer to the start of the season. Football Manager, for example, comes out in October when the season starts. Generally, for the European calendar starts at the end of August. That 2-month delay is enough time for them to get the transfer deadline in and get all of the changes necessary. So it's definitely not at the beginning. F1, of course, comes out in, late June, early July, which is quite a ways into the season. This could certainly come out much sooner in that yearly calendar than it did, and might have had something to do with just trying to get the game right before releasing, and therefore it might not be all the way until August when the next one comes out. So depending on what the time frame is on that, and either way, we might be just about one season from being done, because, well, we accomplished something huge this year. Not being the best team, really only being about the third best team over the course of the season, or at least on average over the course of the season. And actually, even then, we might have been closer to mid-table through big chunks of the season. We have somehow only 8 points ahead of Red Bull, who are third in the constructors and have the best car by far. Ferrari, who we've been neck and neck with, but generally over the course of the season have been just a little bit worse than they were. We finished 2 points ahead of them, and we win the constructors title. And of course, it was on the back of Jack Doohan, who had a monstrous final race. I certainly do recall that, even though I've been was on vacation for a while, and it's been a month since I have played. Actually, you know what? This was probably the first game that I finished recording prior to the vacation. Generally, I'm days ahead on my recording schedule compared to my video release schedule. I'd average a day or two ahead of schedule. This was the first one that I went in and it was just like, let's do it. We're almost to the end of the season, and record weeks before I went on vacation and had it done. So that was one thing checked off my list, because I had to record a lot before going on vacation, and then was gone on vacation for upwards of nearly 3 weeks. And then had taxes to do as soon as I got back. Okay, enough side talk. Let's get back to playing the game. But it's been a month and a half. It's been a while, but I certainly recall the dramatic finish. Now, of course, Doohan and Pourchaire are equal drivers. They are 81. They have equal contracts. They have equal cars. This is no Red Bull situation with a definitive number one driver who they will shoot the number two driver in the foot to help their number one driver. No, this is fair game. But as a rookie, Doohan made mistake after mistake after mistake. But after a disappointing final day for Pourchaire, Jack Doohan, different story. And he carried the team and had the tremendous final laps that saw him overtake the Ferrari, and steal the Constructors' Championship in the dying laps of the race of Abu Dhabi. And yeah, what a way to wrap up the season, and hopefully will give him the confidence coming in as a sophomore driver that he can step up and perform better. Today, we're going to navigate our way through the off season and set ourselves up for the season to come. I will not do any racing within this episode. We're going to see what we can do to prepare the car a bit better for the coming season. Right now, $24 million in the bank. We still have a turn of the month for December. We still, of course, have the January, February exchanges all happening before we get into racing. We should have a significantly better payout. We had already improved our position. Our team rating went up a lot last year. And at 740, and with a Constructors' Championship, you can see that, the points we're going to exchange, the drop off from 8th to 1st, is going to be a huge windfall of rating. And it's going to easily put us above Revered and into that leader category. I mean, we're only a few points shy as it is. So that part is inevitable. The drivers' results is also going to be improved drastically, as we're going to go from nothing in terms of points to a second year in a row of second place. I think that's where we ended up finishing. But that's the work we still have to do. We might have won the Constructors, but we did not take the dual championship. We didn't get the drivers as well. We certainly were nowhere near a 1-2 finish in that department either. We happened to do enough to steal that championship away, being just consistent enough as a team. But with a higher team rating, we should expect better funds. With a Constructors' Championship, we are expecting better funds come next year. But of course, with a Constructors' Championship, we also are going to find ourselves on the back foot when it comes to development, as we are going to be the most restricted team of all. And when we only finished a few points ahead of some teams that already had better cars than what we had, it might be a fantastic result, but it's going to be really hard to replicate because they were already better and they're going to have better development options come next season. So we've got a challenge on our hands to repeat. We've got a huge challenge on our hands to pull off the double that will be the target, will be the aim. Can we accomplish it? Well, one thing that will certainly help us in terms of the finances portion, we are already in a state that the facilities, it's nearly there. It's nearly fully upgraded. We have done a lot. The operations facilities are fully upgraded. We have just 2 scout upgrades that we don't care about, and then it's that car development side. Now the factory is down right now, but it's upgrading currently. 57 days left till that's done, so well before we get into the season, and we're going to see that one at level 4, so it'll have 1 level remaining, and then all that's left is the suspension simulator and the car part test center. So that upgrade, 17 million. This upgrade, 15 million. So in terms of the finances, we have all these years had to spend so much of our general budget on those issues, on bringing those up. But finally, we find ourselves with a top-of-the-line simulator, top-of-the-line wind tunnel, a top-of-the-line design center. And this was not the case until recently, very recently. So our car development over the past year, you have that trade-off. You have weak staff, you had not top-of-the-line facilities, and limited time, which meant upgrades were hard to make, and you had to really commit to them in a substantial way to actually make them be an upgrade. A generic base upgrade would make the car worse. But now we have top-of-the-line facilities. Okay, we still have the same staff issue. Hopefully with the top-of-the-line facilities, it's going to be enough of a wash that we don't have to spend as much of that wind tunnel time and rely entirely on that to be the factor that gets us to improve. Hopefully we can now invest a little bit less, see improvement, and go a little bit closer to the cost cap, because that's one thing that we really came up short of this year. Cost cap, let's go for the full projected. We still have a little bit left on that. We're down to 14.5 million. I mean, we finally closed in. And, famously, it's that 2.2 million that Red Bull went over the cost cap on. And anyone outside of a Red Bull fan knows that how important that 2.2 million was and how much of a difference it made for them. If we can get closer to that cost cap next season, that could and should and hopefully will keep us just about there. But you can see this season we actually spent far more than what we did in the past years, and without those huge other expenses to worry about in the future, spending all that we can spend on car development in the coming year hopefully will help us stay a top 3 car throughout the season. Here is that confirmation of not taking the Drivers' Championship with Verstappen, claiming that one. Porsche was in fact second, and then it was Jack Doohan down in 6th place, but only 42 points behind his teammate. Somehow the combination was enough, because Carlos Sainz, the Red Bull teammate of Verstappen, only scored 49 points this year. Perez and Leclerc, surprisingly, at 3rd and 4th, didn't get that constructors, but it was that extra 13 points that Porsche had, and Doohan only being 11 behind Perez. So we were in between what the other 2 teams around us were doing, where you had one team that was an extreme one-car team with a second car. Sainz is a good driver, but Red Bull is so overly committed to that concept that he's our guy that they just destroy that second car all the time, which hurts their chances at the constructors. The only reason why in real life they were able to get it last year was the car was so totally dominant that it made it easy for their B-man to score some points. And that being Perez, of course, score enough points that they comfortably won the constructors. And of course the reliability issues of Ferrari was a big concern. Now of course here you have 2 almost equal drivers in Ferrari, but they also had those issues again this year, and they were hit and miss, where the car was not a clear second place at times in the season and struggled to perform, struggled to score points at all. We were a little more consistent in that matter, not with Doohan, of course. Doohan had all sorts of issues, but when he didn't have issues, he scored a decent amount of points. Much more than Sainz. Not quite as much as Perez, but that was all the mistakes that he made. Porsche, meanwhile, was very consistent of getting the most out of the car for the majority of the season, and that performance was, of course, the main key that got us over the top. The teams have had very little changeover when it came to their staff, including us. We've only changed a single position throughout the entire playthrough. In real life, DeMaison was replaced this past year, so that did happen. And looking at his comparison to Simon Resta of McLaren is significantly better. And I think it's time. I think it's time we finally move on from DeMaison, especially. I think the deciding factor for me being what happened in real life. But with only 1 month left in his contract at McLaren, his salary obviously is higher than what we are paying DeMaison. And the buyout fee, yeah, that is something. That is something on that one. But his buyout fee is next to nothing. So let's see what we can do about changing it up and potentially improving our car for the coming year. So we're going to start small with a identical contract to what he's making at McLaren. I'm guessing he's probably not going to accept that. And then a small bonus, but we'll see what happens with that one. Yeah, contract declined. We are going to have to pay him more. But 3 seasons and that starting bonus are both good. He's happy with those. He's neutral at 3.5, and that's enough to get him signed. So, we're only looking at an increase of about 1.3 million over what we're paying DeMason over the course of an entire year, spread out into monthly payments. That is nothing. It's 100,000 a year, a month. That's it. We're going to have increased finances far beyond 100K per month. So there you go. Deal done. Upfront cost $2.6 million to get DeMason out the door. But this is somebody who's going to actually make the car better. And with the better facilities and the better staff member, I'm liking our chances of offsetting the decreased wind tunnel quite a bit and can actually start getting a car towards the top end of the field for a change. Our board review, of course, they're excited about our first place finish. Their target year for that was not until 2029, and we've already done it. How could our heritage drop a point? That's odd. But we do push up to 842, so we add 100 points overall with the constructors and drivers' points going up quite a bit. I did say it was going to go up. I can't believe that the heritage would drop when we add a constructors championship to our history, and none of the other history has disappeared. We have better history. We should have better heritage for our score than before. But that team rating now into that high category, we get a team bonus 1.5 million. Most of the regulation changes for the coming season are bringing us back to where we were just a year ago. Pole position bonus, fastest lap bonus. Pole position, that's actually a new one, isn't it? But the fastest lap bonus we had a year ago. The points allocation is back to the standard one that we are used to in Formula One. A new one for the coming year is double points for the last. No, that's the one. Okay, so we had that one implemented a couple years ago. It lasted for 1 season before they got rid of it, and then they're bringing it back again. I think the pole position bonus is a new one for us. Obviously, it's not there in real life. We are seeing the cost cap decrease by 5 million in the coming season, which means our 14 million short of that would then be 9 million comparatively next year. So actually we're fairly close. The minor technical changes that we are seeing for the year is a chassis decrease in airflow middle 30%, drag reduction 30%. So the chassis is seeing a pretty healthy drop, where the side pods are only seeing a minor decrease of 10% to airflow and drag reduction. And of course, trying to offset that 30% loss, a chassis research project has just concluded to help make up that ground. The engine cooling is not what was impacted. We're already at that stage where things are locked development-wise, so we can't implement anything new over this final month. But the engine cooling, we get a small upgrade, but we recover a good 5% in the drag reduction and airflow middle in terms of that overall percentage. But they're still a little short of where we were with the engine cooling, which of course did not see any impact. So relatively, you would hope that we would get back to about 73% if all things were made equal. We're still a good 4%, 5% below where we would want to be for that. So our chassis is going to come into the new season hurting just a little bit, but mostly already recovered. We've added a front wing upgrade, or a research project that is. And for that one, you can see we're looking at minor gains, not even 1%, but anything you can get, anything you can do to get better is that. We're looking at the 80% range already, so the front wing is really pushing the limits of what can happen without better facilities, without better staff, which that part hopefully next year will allow us to continue development, because we really were kind of capping out on what DeMason and our facilities could get out of the car. We've also finished a side pod research project. This was the other area that was seeing a bit of a decline, that 10% drop off. You could see we are already back into the low mid 70s. The engine cooling is where we were at, 72.5%. The drag reduction where we were at was 73%. We've already covered it off as we are back to 72% for the airflow. So that 10% has been covered off. And then we're seeing the additional gains of a couple percent in engine cooling and drag reduction, meaning our side pods are going to come back as good and actually a little bit better than where they were leaving off after the regulation changes. And our last research project of the calendar year before we get into the new year and have things unlocked once again is an underfloor research project. And you can see how dominant we already are in the underfloor area. The airflow sensitivity back up and over 80%. I think we had seen a significant decrease the previous year. The drag reduction's already 85%, but it's an area that I continually am working on as top speed was a serious issue for us. The downforce, minor, but definitely some improvement. And that brings us into our new season. The additional sponsor money. This season, I'm taking a min-max approach to it. I'm maximizing two areas that are going to bring in the most money and minimizing all the rest because they have harmful side effects. So the two that I'm maxing are the merchandising. The most units we can bring in is 5,000, and yes, it comes with a hefty upfront cost, but then the income per race increases to a grand total profit-wise of 9 million. So that's the max. The other max that we're going for is the driver appearance. So we're going to send both drivers out for a grand total of 22 media appearances, bringing in an extra 14 million to the side. Now everything else becomes small potatoes. The race simulator events hurt our XP gain. We'll bring in 2.4 million as the minimum. Race hospitality, same thing. Memorabilia room events, same story. And these ones are optional and shut off entirely, which is saving us from incurring the penalties that come along with having those. Now, with two maxes and some mins and some not at alls, we're not bringing in as much sponsor money as is possible, but we are setting ourselves up for improving the most as a squad or doing what we need to do. We're going to have 16 million preseason lump sum up front, so we'll be adding that into our grand total. So we'll be closing in on 48 million, just shy of, and we'll be bringing in 5 million per race. Now, apparently our new season objective, or is this still showing off the old one? I think it's kind of showing off the old one, but this was our long-term objective and our new season objective. But it sounds like they want us to finish second or above, knowing that the car is not the best on the grid. Overall, when you add in the board payments, we're looking at plus 22 million. It's a good start to the year. And here is that trade-off in the components. You can see our engine cooling improved on the chassis. The airflow actually decreased. So the regulation change has taken away more than we recovered. We are a little bit short, so the chassis will be a little worse off. Front wing has seen minor gains as we head into the new year, thanks to research. The rear wing was not touched, so it will be the same state that it was. The side pods, the engine cooling plus 5%, so that's definitely a solid gain, and we've nearly covered off the other areas just about across the board. Underfloor has seen minor gains, and the suspension has seen minor gains heading into the new season. That season prize share, we gained 20 million by claiming that Constructors Championship. That's a lot of extra cash. Heading into this final season, we need every advantage we can get, so we are going to get that Honda engine. No, Red Bull Powertrains does not exist. It's a total farce. We're going to get that Honda engine. It's plus 5% on the power. We need it to compete with Red Bull. We really do. The power loss threshold kicks in a little bit higher, though, so it does start to have power loss once it falls below 85%, unless it's the opposite. It could be that it holds up better. I don't know how that one works. There's not a good descriptive for this one. It says it's first, so I suppose that would be the situation. In terms of the wear resistance, it is the worst. However, we're talking about a 1% difference, and that's all, and it's quite close between them all. But thermal resistance, definitely better than Ferrari. The fuel efficiency and the ERS durability are where we're going to take a pretty hefty hit. We're going to lose 15% of fuel efficiency, meaning we're not going to be able to push the engine very much, but it's going to give us better speed lap after lap after lap, and that's going to be important. But does mean more often than not we're going to have to do some fuel saving techniques, or really just make sure we have enough fuel in the tank and not under fuel on a regular basis as we have in the past, in order to gain that little extra speed, that little extra lap time. Running light was one of our big keys with that Ferrari engine. Now we want to make sure we have enough fuel in there, as it's not a very fuel efficient engine. But with the extra gearbox durability, the thermal resistance, the extra power loss threshold, and the extra speed in the first place, should really help us out. But it looks like we're going to burn through ERS much faster, so we'll take on some penalties for that, and we're going to have to run a little bit heavier, which will just about kind of make things neutral. But we are going to save 5 million amazingly by switching to the Honda. So our car report as we go in, as we had those minor changes, but we had that little bit regulation change that we didn't quite offset. So where does that put us? Well, our top speed, and with a new engine entering the year, our top speed has improved marginally. Our acceleration has fallen off just a hair. It should be covered off pretty quickly. But our low speed cornering has improved by 100th, our medium speed by 100th, and our high speed not quite 100th. So slight improvement in cornering as we head into the new season. Our DRS top speed is the same. Our acceleration fell off without falling off. It's marginally worse without actually being any amount different. Our dirty air cornering has improved by roughly 1%. Our brake cooling has improved by 5%, and our engine cooling has improved by 4% heading into the new season. So we are seeing some very, very good things across the board, where we are neutral in a lot of places and a little bit better in some. And that's good, because there were regulation changes, and those regulation changes we have managed to offset, cover off, and come out of it slightly better. Let's hope that some of the other cars with the regulation changes will be starting the year a partial step behind where they were, which would definitely give us a leg up. On to the team roster changes. Of course, we still have Pourchaire and Doohan, but we're looking at Leclerc, Perez, and Richard Verschoor in Ferrari as their reserve driver. Looking at 91.89 for those. So, I mean, we are a -9 compared to them. Average, that's a gap. That's a gap to cover off. Verstappen and Russell at Red Bull. Oh my goodness. Two excellent drivers now. Piastri is their reserve driver, with Bottas and Sainz at McLaren, and Vesti their reserve. At Alpine, we have Ricciardo and Norris with Oliver Bierman. Ocon and Gasly at Mercedes. Interesting. Two prospective Mercedes drivers at some point. Ocon obviously was their man for the future before Russell eclipsed him to become that man. And Nick DeVries, their reserve driver. No surprise on that one. But Guan Yu Zhou, Kevin Magnussen are at Alfa Romeo, and they are of a similar level to us. Ocon and Gasly are a little bit ahead. Ricciardo and Norris are a little bit ahead. We are almost on their level with Dennis Hauger as their reserve. AlphaTauri, that is about our level. So Schumacher 80, Albon in 84, and then Zane Maloney, the reserve driver there. Aston Martin, that is very much on our level, as well as you have Lance Stroll and Giovinazzi. Stoffel Van Dorn, really underrated at a 74, should be better. Haas, the worst driver lineup on the grid, with Tsunoda in 80. He's the lowest rated driver alongside Mick Schumacher. But then Latifi, 6 points worse. How has Latifi gotten a seat again with all those drivers that were out there? Callum Williams is just as good as Latifi is, and would have any amount of potential better than what Latifi has. But once again this year, we do find ourselves with a still below average pair of drivers heading into the year. It's quite clear, quite evident what one of our major shortcomings is as we go to enter the season. As our driver pairing, they just make it really, really hard. These are guys with high potential, and ignore Doohan for a second, but just think about Pourchaire. This was a driver with some of the highest potential on the entire F2 or F3 pool of drivers. He was one of the best drivers to start with highest potential. Piastri might be a little bit better, and actually Piastri is an 82 right now, even though he's just a reserve driver. But that is a single example. Jack Doohan started a little bit ahead. Pourchaire's already caught up to him because he's got the higher potential. He's been a reserve driver for a number of years, so I mean, these are the three premier non-F1 drivers. Between all three of them, we're looking at a couple 81s and an 82. They are still just catching up to the very, very back-end guys. Very, very back-end guys that in a couple cases probably aren't any better than these guys are in real life. They just happen to have the right finances, the right backing, the right sponsorship to get promoted above them earlier than them. But ultimately, you're looking at drivers that were already neck and neck in real life. And yet, after years of development, we still can't nudge ahead of those guys. And I've mentioned it before, but it's a clear sign that development for young drivers is too slow. It needs to be a bit more of an accelerated path. Pourchaire in particular, Doohan I don't mind as an 81, 82 at this point, as he just had his rookie season. But Pourchaire, 3 years, 4 years, 3.5 years in the seat, something like that. He should be mid-80s at the least at this point. I mean, he doesn't have to be rivaling Leclerc and Perez. That's fine. But he should be closing in on Bottas. He should absolutely be closing in on an Ocon, a Gasly, and unfortunately a Ricciardo. I mean, Ricciardo not long ago was seen as one of the best drivers on the grid. And then real life happened and he struggled a bit, and his ratings have since, taken a knock. He doesn't even have a seat in real life this year. So that being considered, we should have caught up to Ricciardo by now. Not the case. And, in real life, after 3.5 years with a team that just won the Constructors' Championship in particular, you would think that at the very least he'd be an 84 or 85. Anyway, I don't want to see a proper car comparison until we get to preseason, but knowing the individual parts and what we could do, and as we enter our 2 months to go until the opening race of the season situation and $31 million in the bank, plenty of upgrades are going to be coming before we hit the preseason. So where to go, what to do, how to make it happen, especially with limited hours, well, that's going to be a big ask. I know the chassis is something we lost in. You can see we are 11th, 13th, and 3rd. So that airflow middle, that came along pretty nicely, but that drag reduction certainly took a hit. I'm going to commit a little bit of time to this, not much, but we're going to give it a little bit, see what we can do with the drag reduction in particular here in the chassis, and looking for this to be a pretty quick turnaround. So yeah, there you go, drag reduction. We can jump that all the way up to 3rd almost overnight without speeding things or without hurting things too long. I'm not worried about the engine cooling taking any sort of rapid upgrade, as our engine cooling is now, it's mid-tier, and it doesn't seem to impact the car a whole lot, or at least in any noticeable way. We are getting some feedback on where we're at, which has altered, hasn't it? But yeah, let's start with that drag reduction. I think with 20 engineers, we can manage to do 4 projects simultaneously. This will take 24 days. I think a lot of these first projects, we're going to try to go for the intense one to get the bonuses for the later projects. Spend a little bit more up front. Underfloor is one of the great concerns, and you absolutely want to get that first one going to get it on the car in time for the season. And we're not starting from a bad place, but we're definitely not starting from the best place. So let's see what we can do, what it's going to take to move us up the grid a bit on this one. And it looks like we can make progress here pretty quickly regarding this. I'm going to go a little heavy on what we have left. We'll push this up to about 1.4. That leaves 2.3 for 2 more upgrades here in the short term. And actually, you know what? That's maybe a little. We'll drop that to 1.3. It's nice to actually be able to see upgrades. This is a different territory than where we were most of last season, where we just couldn't make the progress without using a wide amount of hours. Now we can commit small amounts of hours and see pretty solid gains between a better technical chief and between much better facilities, top end facilities. Now that wind tunnel, you can see, yeah, we're looking at making some gains. That drag reduction, this is already pushing us up into a very, very strong position underfloor wise, putting it just about at the top. You know, others are going to be making upgrades as well, by the way. It's not just us. But let's take those 2 and bump them up a little bit more. Can we? Oh, temporarily anyway. We could get this all to first. Oh, I like that. That's a good start position for the year. Now, again, other upgrades are coming, but I like it. 64 days is not enough. Let's go full team of 6. We'll sacrifice someone somewhere. I'm going to throw in a side pod one, not with a lot of time committed to it, but the intensity, the focus is going to be intense across the board to help raise it up a little bit more. It's going to make it take longer, cost a little bit more to get it done, but it'll make up for the minor hours that we are putting into it, and I'm assuming that it's going to be done quickly enough. Yeah, 44 days. This is where we're going to save that engineer, so we have 5 more for our other upgrade as well, and just 210k for this. So my 4th and final upgrade for the moment is going to go to the front wing again. Even though I haven't touched the rear wing yet, the rear wing was the best. It's not going to be the best, but it's still going to be very, very good compared to the rest of the grid. So therefore, I'm letting that one go for just a little bit and focusing on areas that need it more. The front wing's good, but it can be better, so we're going to make it better. We're going to have 1.1 MAU hours left, and wind tunnel hours will have 17 remaining. It's a 60-day period, which means we actually enter the new period before we even start the season. But some of these upgrades are going to be done in roughly a month, so we're going to be able to turn around and immediately get into our next upgrades. This is going to provide us improvements: low speed, medium speed, high speed across the board. Brake cooling, airflow sensitivity is going to go to the top, at least for now, along with the medium speed, and the airflow front is going to jump up quite a bit. So really happy with the kind of gains that we are getting for this. You know, overall, we're going to see healthy upgrades out of these 4 and still have a little bit of hours left to do more. So I'm pretty happy with our start point for car development this year. I've only done it for one other part so far, and the cost is a little bit higher with this one, driving it up to 1.5, but we are going to go for the intense on this front wing delivery as well to help give us an extra boost, you know, later on, and that's going to make future front wing upgrades more sensible, more practical, and definitely won't be using the intense on too many upgrades this season, but we'll do it here. Factory upgrade is complete, so it's ready to manufacture parts for the car for the coming season in a much faster rate, many more of them at the same time. We've got a solid factory now at 4th tier, I believe. 1 tier remains. Yeah, project capacity goes from 4 to 5, but more importantly, development speed goes from 7, where the condition was quite low, to 18 with better effectiveness and better rating. Huge difference. One thing I was curious about was whether there was going to be new drivers entering the pool, and I resolved that by scouting every last driver in the pool by the end of last season, and I've been working on staff of late. But with the entire pool scouted, and we enter a new year, I now see a new pool of 18, 19, 20-year-olds who have entered our detailed scouting. None of them are great. They're all coming in towards the bottom end here, but 53 and below, there are actually quite a few new drivers that enter the drivers pool and enter F3 for quite a few of them anyway. First upgrade of the year on the chassis is complete. Of course, that was the one that we hadn't quite covered off. With that upgrade, I'm pretty sure we now have the chassis covered off. These days, the reality was there was the three primary components that make the car go fast, and we worked on those first, of course, throughout that first season, didn't touch the others. By the time we got along a bit, those other three parts, which, well, the reality was we started from the back anyway, but the reality was those three components, the suspension, the side pods, the chassis, were all dead last. Now the chassis and the side pods have now come along and gotten pretty competitive compared to the rest of the field, and where we had started to lose the ground we had made up in those other three categories last season, we didn't get to the top, but we recovered a lot of that, got to competitive. So now we're finally at 5 out of 6 car components being pretty competitive to the rest of the grid. They're up there. They're top 5 in almost every area. And then there's the suspension, which is still dead last at literally everything. The suspension is one that I think I'm going to need to continually pump out upgrade after upgrade this season in order to bring it along and get it out of the cellar in which it presides in right now. Second upgrade of the year is the front wing. Like I said, the rear wing was already pretty good, with a single upgrade using the remaining time that we have for this development period, which is actually really only a little bit. And going back and only adding focus to a single area, airflow sensitivity, which is definitely a bit behind where the drag reduction DRS deltas are at, bringing that up to 81%, playing catch up a little bit. High speed remains neutral, but everything else is seeing gains on this one, and it brings us to apparently number 1 on the grid across the board, even though high speed wasn't actually even improving, but it means the car ahead of us essentially has the exact same level, and our minute difference puts us to the top, I suppose. But that one weaker spot, that airflow sensitivity, is going to jump from 9th to 1st. Staff points have been coming along, and James Irwin is now an 81 overall after we added another point to pit crew management. Side pod project is done, but of course we don't have any additional upgrades ready for now, so we're just going to go ahead and produce those new side pods and have them ready for the start of the season. Our latest suspension design is done, but I also have some pre-season testing results. We're going to take a look at those and then go ahead and call that one an episode, as we are just about ready to begin the new season. Now, so far, only a couple of the upgrades have made their way onto the car just yet, but our Car 1 performance now looks like this. Top speed is 3rd overall, acceleration is 9th, and we have not recovered the little bit that we lost just yet, but we are 5th in low speed cornering, we are 1st in medium speed cornering, and 3rd in high speed cornering, and that is as good, if not better, than anywhere we were last season in those regards, as we spent most of the year around 6th to 12th in that department. So getting up near the top of the grid is important. DRS is something that we had improved a lot last season, and we are 3rd in top speed and acceleration right now. And then Car 1 performance in dirty air cornering is 3rd, 1st. So we have returned to the top in those departments. We have seen us drop off just a little bit when it comes to our performance compared to the rest of the grid. No, we haven't dropped off really. We've continued to improve, but we are 11th in brake and engine cooling each, and that's not bad. I mean, 3 technical categories, we are right at mid-pack, and we are top 5 in one, and we are top 3 in everything else. That's a good start to where we're at. That's still not going to be enough to be faster than probably Red Bull, but that might be second quickest car to start the season with 2 weeks to go till we get started. And for us, That's generally enough to get up there and fight for those podiums and fight for those wins on a pretty regular basis, because the strategy can make up a lot for what's lacking in driver prowess and the car. But you can only make up for the car so much. This is looking like a pretty competitive car to start the season. I'm encouraged by where we're at this stage. And 24 million in the bank is certainly not a bad place to be right now, as we've been focusing a lot on development here, and then more money is going to start kicking in. The end of February is just days away. We might even want to get one of those final upgrades to the facilities going here shortly. That is going to do it for this episode, though. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there, and bye for now.